So I tested him. I thought, wow, this is the most exciting and interesting thing I have ever come across. And so the next day I went down, spoke to my parents and said, I don't want to read English anymore, I want to study law. And so they were like, oh yes, excellent, lawyer in the family. And I just had this crazy feeling. What it was, this was panic attack. I didn't know it at the time. I had this huge panic attack and all I wanted to do was leave the lecture hall. It was utterly horrific. You know, this was like 1990, the word panic attack hadn't even been invented at that time. The bureaucracy of working in a big organisation, totally stifling. I hated it. Could never make a decision without it going through about 1 million committees. Did not enjoy that at all. You know, I wanted to be able to make a decision and for it to be implemented because I was right.
If you have been enjoying listening to the stories of entrepreneurs across Edinburgh, then why not subscribe? If you're on YouTube, you can hit the red button down below and hit the bell to get notifications. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, then subscribe to the podcast. We hope you enjoy the show. Victoria, it's so great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about your business, give everyone a snapshot of what you do?
I can. I run a business called The Curious Gem. We are an online retailer of jewellery supplies. So that means we don't make the jewellery ourselves, but we sell all the supplies that you might need to make jewellery. So we're talking chain, wire, gemstones, beads, tools, anything, pearls, anything you might need to make jewellery. So yeah, we don't make it ourselves. We've got offices in Edinburgh near Fort Kinnaird, and we have currently about 21 people on payroll, including myself. And we kind of fluctuate, the numbers fluctuate, particularly at time of year. We'll probably get more people in for Christmas as that's our busiest time.
And just out of interest, what kind of customers would you have then?
Yeah, so it really ranges from the hobbyist, so somebody sitting at maybe their kitchen table making jewellery for their children or friends. We've then got your sort of, our main customer is what I'd call people who've started up their own business. They may be working from home still, or they may have a small workshop. And we've got a lot of people who make jewellery and sell on the high street. So that's quite a big source of customers for us. And then we've got professional jewellers as well who are making sort of high-end rings, jewellery. They might have their own high street shop. They are not our biggest company. Our biggest set of customers. Our biggest set of customers is that sort of like middle group, who are, mainly women, I would say, ranging from 30 to 50 maybe. My sister, for example, is one of our customers. She makes jewellery. She is in that range.
Does she get a discount?
She does get a very hefty discount, yes. I wouldn't be able to get away with that if I didn't give her a discount. Quite a broad spectrum. So we've got to provide a broad spectrum of goods as well. So from things that are going to entice a beginner that aren't too expensive to things that really are going to be put in expensive pieces of jewellery.
Yeah, amazing. So take us back to the beginning. How did this all start?
Right, back to the beginning. So,
go as far back as you want.
Right, well, where shall I start? In my teenage years, I didn't actually want to run a business. Business wasn't really part of what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for the BBC. I wanted to be a researcher or a journalist. And that was everything to me. That's just what I wanted to do. So I was editor of the school magazine. I was trying to get work published, writing poetry, writing all sorts of things. And then I got a place to read English at Warwick, and that was going to be my journey going onwards towards journalism. And probably about a couple of months before I was due to go there, my boyfriend was round at our house, and he was studying law for A-level. And at my school, we we didn't have that option of law. It was very, very traditional. Law was just like a bit out there. And he asked me to test him. So I tested him. I thought, wow, this is the most exciting and interesting thing I have ever come across. And so the next day I went down, spoke to my parents and said, I don't want to read English anymore. I want to study law. And so they were like, oh yes, excellent. Lawyer in the family. Neither of them been to uni. They were just like, yes, get in. So I went, and luckily they changed my offer, and I went to work and read law. That was great. All I wanted to do was be a solicitor or a barrister. I didn't know what. But then in my first year, kind of disaster struck. I was sitting in a lecture in my second term, and I just had this crazy feeling. And what it was, this was panic attack. I didn't know it at the time, but I had this huge panic attack, and all I wanted to do was leave the lecture hall. It was utterly horrific. So I went out, left, thought that's really weird, didn't know what it was. You know, this was like 1990, the word panic attack hadn't even been invented at that time. It was just like something weird was happening to me. Went back to the next lecture the next day, exactly the same thing happened. I thought, oh, whoa, okay, this is weird. So from then onwards, I never went to another lecture when I was at uni. So I just studied myself, because every time I tried to go to a seminar or lecture, I would get like this overwhelming feeling and have this sort of like panic attack. So I basically just taught myself from books. I had some really nice friends that I'd made, and they lent me some of their notes. And anyway, I managed to get through university and got my degree. Now, if you want to go into the legal profession, you then have to go on to law school. And the thought of like another year studying, and basically I couldn't stay in a room and study myself at that point, because you have to go and attend mock trials and you have to actually be physically present. So that put the kibosh on becoming a lawyer. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to rethink about what I'm going to do here, because I thought I'm not going to let this like destroy a career. I know that I've got potential, and whatever I choose to do, I can do something. So I went on a graduate scheme with the Metropolitan Police as a civilian, not as uniform. I was on the graduate scheme, and basically I was 22 and they plonked me into a section where I basically had to co-manage a team of about 18 people. I'd never ever been managed myself, and I'd never been a manager before.
Wow.
They stuck me on a management course for 5 days, which basically I was freaking out on every day because of like the panicking things. So I was just basically like rabbit in headlights, sitting there every single day thinking, this is awful, please can this day end? So nothing was really getting absorbed. However, I did it, I went on it, and I came back, still didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was having to manage, there was a police inspector there, a detective inspector who had recently retired. You retire at 50 if you're in uniform, and loads of experience, 25 years experience, 30 years experience. I was expected to manage this man. I mean, we both thought this was the most ridiculous thing, him included and me. Crazy. All I wanted to do was go out to the pub, have fun with the people I was working with, have a drink, and management, you know. And this got me into trouble because I became really good friends with somebody who I was managing, and then there was an incident at work that had to be dealt with, that I had to deal with. She was my friend, a really good friend. I went out drinking with her, and I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. It was awful. I don't think these management schemes are a good idea. You know, just give me some experience of being managed myself so I know what a good or a bad manager looks like, and then let me manage. So I lasted a year there. I actually left not because of the whole management thing, but just because I got a bit bored and I was getting a bit freaked out. I had to go to a lot of big meetings with sort of like people high up in the police, and with all this panicky thing, I was like, I could do it, but it just wasn't sitting comfortable with me. So then I moved into legal publishing, and that was more of a stable time. There's not a lot of big meetings. I was doing weird things like revising tax volumes and got my name in the front of like some kind of like Halsbury's Laws of England revised by Victoria Brown. I mean, that's luckily not in the library anymore because
That sounds like a good read.
yeah, a really, really good bedtime reading, that one. So again, got a bit bored after a couple of years of that. Being bored is a bit of a feature in my life. Do get bored quite easily. So at that time I was thinking, gosh, what am I going to do now? The law is not really kind of working for me. And so I thought I've probably got to get retrained in something. So it was mid-90s. There was quite a lot of talk about people wanting to get women into computing. And I thought, right, I'm going to go that direction. I thought I need a challenge. I'm going to learn how to be a computer programmer. So I went back to university.
So random.
Yeah. I went to university and I did a master's in computer science. And it was great. I mean, I was completely challenged. I had to learn things like mathematical set theory, circuits, programming, learned how to write Java, things that I'd never done before. But it was great. But I still had to sit through all those lectures, still on my kind of panicky thing. But I thought, no, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to let this set me back. And I got my master's, brilliant. And then I moved into, I became a database programmer. And I worked for London University, UCL, and then I moved up to Edinburgh, and I worked for Edinburgh Uni as a computer programmer. That was great. People I worked with, absolutely fantastic. The programming I really liked. The bureaucracy of working in a big organization, totally stifling. I hated it. Could never make a decision without it going through about 1 million committees. Did not enjoy that at all. I was actually team leader at this point. You know, I wanted to be able to make a decision and for it to be implemented because I was right. And I didn't want anyone else to say, no, that's the wrong decision.
There's the lawyer coming out.
I am right. So I was thinking at this point in time, okay, I'm kind of enjoying this. I love the people, but I need another challenge. What am I going to do? And I thought I really want to start my own business. In that way, I have control over what I'm doing. I have control over my environment. So the panicky kind of like things, I can kind of control the environments that I want to go in, that I feel comfortable in. Like big meetings, high-powered meetings, they were really a problem for me. But I thought if I had my own business, I don't really have to have those high-powered meetings. I can make them as low power as possible and as relaxed and as informal as possible. So I looked into franchising. I thought this would be, you know, quite an interesting way of getting into it. And I had a friend who was working in London at the time, and he had met up with this guy who had started a kind of upmarket home, it's not really home help, but sort of providing cleaning and sort of help around the home. And they were operating a franchise model across the country. Mm-hmm. So I went down to London and got on really well with the guy. And he said, you can have it was either the Edinburgh or Fife franchise. You know, obviously we want your cash. But that was going to be okay. But then on the train back, I was thinking, is franchising really for me? Because basically at the interview, he showed me a manual. It was sort of like a ring binder. And it's like, this is how you employ people. These are the questions that you ask when you employ people. This is how your day runs from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. Everything was really, really laid out. And that is generally the franchise model, because it's based on what they know works and how they bring money in. But I thought, is that what I really want to do? Do I really want to be told exactly how to run a business? Yeah. Where's me in this, and where is my decision making here? I wanted some sort of control. That's what I was looking for, and I felt like I would be giving up a lot of that if I went down the franchise model. So I said, thank you very much, but no thank you. Back to square one, what am I going to do? So at I feel like this is quite a long story.
No, but it's good. It's really good.
So we're on to the next stage now, which is I'm now getting to my business now. At the time, I started making jewellery with my sister. It was around about 2007. There were loads of bead shops around Edinburgh. Like stringing some things on some thread and crimping the ends and making necklaces was all the thing. And we just kind of did it as fun. And then some people started taking interest, so we started going and selling what we'd made to like fairs. We were did Christmas fairs standing outside, freezing our butts off, just awful, snowing, and we were there trying to sell our necklaces. But actually it was quite good.
Yeah, no, and at this point, so you're not working at the moment. So how are you funding?
I was working.
Oh, you're working.
Yeah, so this was totally a side hustle.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so just doing something in the spare time, bringing a bit of extra money in, and really liking that. I mean, I love being able to sell some goods, and feeling the cash in your hands. There's just nothing better than that feeling. And so I started off quite a successful little side hustle, making jewellery and selling it. I did a lot of markets, craft fairs, makers markets, and it was okay, but we're not talking a lot of money, 5-10 grand a year. It was a side hustle. Absolutely nothing that I could give up my job for and start that as a because I was actually being paid quite well at Edinburgh Uni. I was a team leader, and that's quite difficult. If you're on a good salary, the prospect of giving that up for something that's quite uncertain, that's quite a big deal. So in the process of me making jewellery, I was looking for some goods and bits and pieces, some interesting kind of gems that I could make into more interesting jewellery instead of like the standard things that people were selling. And I found some people on eBay selling really interesting sort of gems. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I could do that. And I kind of did a bit of research and saw where they were buying their stock from. Because on eBay you can see, or you used to be able to see on a seller's account where people were buying things from at the same time. So I just looked and found all their suppliers. They should have had 2 accounts. This was their fault. They should have had 2 accounts, a buying and a selling account, but they didn't. Yeah. So I just checked out where they were buying stuff from. And terrible as it sounds, I just copied the model and I just started buying loads of stuff from mainly America, big strands of, for want of a better word, beads, splitting them into small parcels and then selling them in an eBay shop. And it did really well. And I thought, okay, there's something in this. So I thought, right, I'm just going to make my first investments. I think it was like 500 quid. I found a supplier in India online. It was a bit of a, is this going to work? Is my money just going to disappear? Anyway, I bought a load of stuff. I got the goods back from India. Excellent. It was all legit. And I started selling that. And the Curious Gem started. So I was still working at this time. I basically didn't take out any money. Any money I made, I just reinvested back into the business. And it got to a point where I was having so many orders, there was just no way I could work full time at the uni and do this as a side hustle. So I asked them, could I go part-time? They were really good to me. They were lovely. I had lovely managers and they let me go part-time. So that really did me a big favor. So I could really establish a business and at the same time work part-time at a decent wage. And then obviously moving on, things started really progressing and I thought I need to go full-time now. I need to be able to sell these things. I've got a business here, I can do this.
And how long was that period then where you kind of were almost doing this hybrid part-time on both and then you had to go full-time on?
I would say 6 months to a year.
Within that time?
Yeah, within that time frame. Okay. So then I left the university. They were still really good. I was still allowed to go back as a consultant just on very, very ad hoc bits of work, which just gave me a bit of extra money. But basically, that's the Curious Gem started. I had, luckily, quite a lot of skills. So the computer skills I built my own website to begin with, based on some open source code. So I had that going for me because it was only ever going to be online. I didn't want to open a shop. I just wanted to be online. And I knew really that I should not be dependent on eBay. I needed my own website. So I have control, because if something happens to eBay, they decide to chuck you off or whatever, you're then screwed. So
at the moment, are all your sales through your website then, or do you have other platforms that you operate on?
Well, at the moment, 90% of sales are through our website and 10% we're on Etsy.
Okay.
10% is through Etsy. Yeah. So I just, that kind of dependency, a lot of people have, for example, my sister sells her jewellery, it's excellent jewellery, on Etsy, but she's totally dependent, and Etsy are not the greatest company to work for. And they've done weird things like shut her shop down randomly and just do weird things. It's all back up and running now. But your business is totally dependent on an outside force. If I've got my own website, yes, I'm dependent on the web host, but we've got a 99.999 uptime. So I'm not really dependent on anybody else. I think it's that dependency. I'm a very independent person.
It's definitely coming through though, isn't it? That need for doing, well, no, but in a good way. But I would say that a lot of business owners would say similar, wouldn't they? That actually I want to do it my way.
Yes.
And not have to be beholden to any other structure or person.
Absolutely, yeah. I want to be able to make my own decisions. They're not always good decisions, but I take responsibility for them, and I always learn from them, hopefully, and don't make the same mistakes. So yeah, I don't mind making a wrong decision as long as I learn from it, but it's my wrong decision, So that's how I've kind of got to where I am now. And luckily the business has really substantially grown from those sort of early days. I'm about 16 years in now. I think the time where it really started to pick off is where I started to employ other people. That's like a big turning point. Once you can start, getting employees, you then grow.
And when was that then? How can I? Well, I've got two questions. Before that, why the Curious Gem? Where did that name come from?
I think I wanted gem in the title for search engine reasons. It needed to say something about the business. Yeah. I mean, at the beginning, I only sold gems and gemstones and beads. I didn't sell any of the metal findings or tools. So that's why it's very gem heavy rather than something jewellery supplies. Yeah. And curious, I don't know, random, just thought, oh, well, that sounds good. I wanted it to be a little bit funky, just something random. Cool. Yeah.
And okay, thank you. And then there's so many questions that are just popping into my head. So how long was it before you employed your first team member?
Yeah, so I was living in Fife at that time, and a friend of mine was working as a legal secretary in Edinburgh, and she wanted to get out of it and have a bit more flexibility. So I employed her to begin with, and that was probably just a couple of years in. I was working in my spare room, and then as soon as I employed somebody, I thought, no, I can't have someone coming round to my house. So I got a small office in Dunfermline, and then she came into work in the mornings, kind of like processing the orders. And then I moved over to Edinburgh and took bigger offices, and that's when I started to employ more people because we're getting busier and busier. And yeah, within about probably the last 3 or 4 years, there's been significant growth, and that's where we've kind of gone from maybe 10 people and doubled in size.
So what was that process like then when you're at the stage of like hiring? If you've never done it before, talk us through kind of what the lessons you learned. Like, was there any particular moments where you realized like, oh, actually that's a big learning and you've used that to...
I never really went on CVs or kind of like that kind of like formal route. I always just employed based on personality. Do I get on with this person? Because I really feel like if you're working in an office and there's not many of you, you really can't have someone there where there's a bit of friction. You have to be able to get on with them. And a lot of the skills involved in what we do, you can learn on the job. Okay, there are a few things that you can't do. If you're on the phones, you need to know how to make jewellery to advise other people. So we have people who have jewellery making degrees on the phone. But for other jobs, based on personality, I didn't always get it right, but I feel like my hit rate is pretty good. We've had very, very few issues with staff. I think I've just been really, really lucky. and taking the time to speak to people in a very informal way and trying to get to know people rather than just hear about their experience at interview, I think has stood us in quite good stead.
And you said your hit rate is good. On the occasions where it's not gone so well, you know, is there a pattern there? Is there stuff that you think, oh shit, I forgot to do that? Or
mainly people who had been there from the start and felt uncomfortable with growth and change, I think. I believe that this is quite a common thing in business, that the people that you employ right at the very beginning, some people, they can move with the company, but some people, they can't. They're always kind of looking back on those, maybe the halcyon days. Where you're sitting around drinking coffee and it's a bit more relaxed. And but in general, I have been very lucky. And the team that I've got at the moment is so solid. I mean, I just could not be luckier with the people that I employ. We've got a great diverse mix of people, all with different backgrounds. We have a lot of the pickers and packers are part-time. It's quite a repetitive job, and we find that 3 days a week works best for that. Because then you've got some time out in the rest of the week. People have got caring responsibilities, or they're working mums, or they've got another side hustle, for example. We find 3 days a week works really well for them. And yeah, the team is pretty tight at the moment. Yeah.
Amazing. So talk us through about the women returning scheme that you use. Tell us a little bit about that. I'd never heard of that. So
well, at the very beginning, I didn't really know where to go to employ people. I mean, I didn't really want to go to a recruitment agency. In fact, I did go to one recruitment agency and it was fine. But I thought, is there any way that I can, I was particularly interested in women coming back to work, having been out because they were looking after children. It's very difficult for women to do that, especially if they've changed, you know, if they don't want to go back to what they were doing originally, very difficult for them to find part-time work. So I thought maybe I can help out here. So there was a scheme run in Edinburgh giving basic skills, particularly on computer skills, to women coming back to work. And so I just approached the owner of the business and said, look, I'm an employer in Edinburgh. After people have completed your training course, you know, if there's anyone interested, I've got jobs at the Curious Gem, if anyone's interested. And we did get a few people join us who are still with us now, who that kind of model suited. And I'm really pleased I went down that route, because I felt like I'm doing something to help a group of people where it's not actually that easy to get a job. And then since then, we've gone down the recruitment agency, and then now we tend to advertise on places like Indeed, as our main source, or word of mouth as well. Yeah.
And tell me, what kind of impact have you noticed with you being recently announced with the E2E Female 100? Is that? Yeah. Have I got that right?
I know, it's a bit of a mouthful. So what happened is I got an email through at the beginning of the year, and it said, "Oh, you're on a list of 100 female founders." Yeah. And I just thought, you get these sort of emails all the time through, and basically they generally, say, you're the best person ever. We're going to put you at number one at the top of a list, and we're going to publish you on a website that no one's ever heard of, and we want £500, please. Yeah, that's generally how it works. And I just thought, oh, it's another one of these emails. But then I looked into it, and I was like, okay, E2E. It's a company that has been founded, based down in London, to promote entrepreneurship. They've got some kind of like high-profile people behind them, and it was a legit business organisation. So I thought, okay, well, that's good. They didn't require any money. I was like, okay, this is good. So I was put on this list of, I think it's like, they're starting a list of 100, and they've got 6 lists this year of all different sort of categories. And the first list that they announced was Female 100, which was female owners or founders that had experienced significant growth over the last 3 years. Now, I scraped in at number 92, which I was pretty upset about because I wanted to be number 1. I was like, how dare you put me at 92? But hey, I was on the list, right? It doesn't matter. So we all got invited down to the House of Commons. You have to go in through the plebs entrance, and then you get shuffled into this kind of like holding pen, and then shuffled off into a side room where there was sort of like a reception and hardly any alcohol available, which was very upsetting.
Did you almost about turn and leave at that point?
That was for 1 to 10. Yeah, 92, you were like, no.
Exactly. Yeah, number 1 like got a whole bottle. 92 like got that much of a glass. Then we did a bit of networking there, and then we were taken into what's called the Strangers' Dining Room, which is where people who aren't in the Lords or the Commons are allowed to dine. And had a very nice meal. The food was actually really good. I thought it'd be like real school dinners, but it was okay. And a lot of networking, a lot of speeches, sitting at a table full of really amazing women doing very different things. In fact, I heard one of the women that I was sitting next to, I heard her on the news the other day. She was speaking because there's a new hepatitis C test that's come out that the NHS are bringing out. It's like a home test, and her company was providing the NHS with this test. And so I heard her on the news. I was like, okay, that's really cool. We kind of know each other.
What number was she?
She was in, I think I was at the 90s table. Yeah, so we all commiserated together. I think they actually did put them in sort of like all the 10s were together.
At the back of the room.
Yeah, we were kind of like at the side. And also the alcohol content did go up a little bit because we got a really nice server, and he realised that there was just not enough wine going on. And so he managed to hide a few bottles on the windowsill behind the curtain that we could access. So that was good. And then we all got kicked out at 10:30. Because you're not allowed to be, if you're not a Lord or an MP, you're not allowed to be in the House of Commons apparently after 10:30. Kicked out, that was it. So it was a really good experience. And I think from my point of view, has it increased business? I doubt it. But what it did do is I wasn't going to go to it. I just thought, this is not me. I'm not a networker. I'm not going to go down there on my own because you don't get a +1. I'm not going to go down there on my own, be surrounded by a load of people I don't know and just have to talk. That's pretty scary for me. But I thought, hang about. I've been given this opportunity. I'd be really stupid not to do it. You don't know what is going to happen. If you don't take an opportunity, you don't know, what the results of it. You've got to just go for it. So I did it. And that was really good for my confidence because I thought I did it, I enjoyed it, I met really nice people. And in fact, a group of us, the 90s, have a little LinkedIn sort of like group that we're sort of chatting to each other. So it was a good thing, and I'm pleased I did it. And also, I'm not someone who says, yes, look what I've achieved. That's sort of not me at all, but it kind of allowed me the chance to say, okay, I have achieved something. I'm on a list. I'm number 92, but I'm on a list, and perhaps I've achieved something.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, there was a little bit of that with even this podcast, right? Yeah. There was like a little element where it's like, oh well, it's not maybe my skill set. Are you going to sell more gems because of this? Maybe necessarily not, but you take the punt, and that's the opportunity question, isn't it?
Well, Alan asked me to come onto the podcast, and my initial reaction was absolutely not. And I said to Alan, I'm completely, in capital letters, out of my comfort zone. And Alan wrote back to me and said, and that is exactly, in capital letters, why you should do it. And he's so true. You have to set out of your comfort zone. And that's something I probably need to do more. And gradually, I feel like maybe as I'm getting older, I feel like more confident to do that now. So I'm really pleased I'm doing this, even though the thought of it is quite scary. You have to do these things because you don't know what's going to happen as a result of it.
Okay, so in the moment then, how does it feel versus what you thought? As we're doing this podcast now, is it worse or better than you thought?
I feel fine. It's much better than I thought. Yeah.
All right.
As you said it would be.
Yeah.
I should trust you.
Yeah. Excellent.
So I know there's a story a little bit about some online fraud that happened. Tell us. I've only heard a little bit, so tell us a little bit about that.
So online fraud, I'm sure, is rife amongst companies, and it took quite a long time for us to actually experience this. So it probably happened about 5 years ago. At my desk, suddenly some emails started to come through from our payment processor saying, this payment, there's been a chargeback on this payment and it's been declined. We're going to take this money out of your account. And we had sent the goods out. And then another email came into my inbox saying exactly the same thing, and another. And probably I got about 10 emails. And it was a significant amount of money, thousands of pounds. And basically what someone had done is pretty standard. They had got someone's credit card details. It hadn't been registered as a missing card. And they'd bought a whole load of stuff from our website. And then later on, the credit card had been flagged as stolen. And so they then put a hold on everything. But we'd sent out the goods. So we actually had lost money because you never get that money back. And basically what he'd done is he'd bought a load of solid gold. Because what you do is you don't sell it then on eBay, you send it to a melting company, they melt it down, and there's actually, there's money in that product. You couldn't really do that. You could buy silver products, but the cost of silver is minuscule compared to gold. So they'd chosen the right things. They'd chosen 14 karat solid gold and sent it off and probably got it melted down. So that was, it wasn't a good experience, but at the end of the day, I just thought it's only money. And also something good did come out of that experience because it made us look at our internal procedures. Are we doing enough to check for online fraud? I thought we were because we'd never had anything like this before. I thought we were watertight. Obviously not. So we spoke to our payment processors, we tweaked a few things in the background to try and stop this from happening, and also got the order supervisors to check for big orders that consisted mainly of solid gold items. That's a bit of a red flag if the order only consists of that. I mean, obviously some people will do that and it will be legit, but we would do a little more investigations. And since then, we've been a bit more on it and we've not, touch wood, had any problems since. So something good did come out of a pretty tricky situation. But the police did get involved. English police, basically the guy who was doing it was based down south, but it's quite a sad story. He used someone with a learning disability in Scotland to take some of the goods. And the Scottish police were fantastic and they tried to interview the person involved. But because there were learning difficulties, nothing ever really happened. English police, rubbish. They didn't even, they had the address of the guy, didn't hear anything else. That was it. So that was money just lost. But, as I say, it was only money and we learned something from it and it hasn't happened since. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, it's interesting. Like you wouldn't think, your store is just a random gem. It's like such a funny target.
Totally.
It would be like, but as you say, like the gold thing is like, obviously, yeah.
He knew what he was doing. Yeah. He totally knew what he was doing. Yeah, you can just melt it down. Yeah. It's not like, he's not going to steal, £1,000 worth of beads and try and sell them on eBay.
Yeah.
No.
And are there other sort of stories that you can think of things that have gone wrong that you think, actually, that was a blessing? Looking back, that was a blessing because it kind of bounced us on to other things or newer ways?
Well, something not really that went wrong, but just before the pandemic happened, literally 3 days before we were told we had to stay at home, we moved office. And we moved into an office about 3 times the size of the place that we were at. So with a price of 3 times the price that we were paying, 3 days later we were told we had to stay at home. And I was like, oh, hang about. I've got a really, really big bill here for rent, and now I'm not going to be able to go into work, and that was pretty scary, thinking, what have I done? However, it was a total blessing in disguise, because once all the uncertainty of the pandemic and what we were supposed to do had passed, we knew that we were allowed to go back to work if we could socially distance. And wow, we had all this space to socially distance. We could run a business with all our staff more than 2 meters apart. We could not have done that in our old office. If we hadn't have moved, we would only probably have been able to have 2 or 3 people in the office at any one time. We were getting loads of orders in through the pandemic. The business would have just nosedived, I think, because we wouldn't have been able to get things out on time. And we just wouldn't have, it would have been a disaster, actually. So something bad I thought might be bad, something actually really good came out of it. Thank goodness we did move, because we could then expand. Yeah, very good time.
And did your business benefit from the pandemic? I know that some businesses suffered massively, but some also
yes, and I feel guilty about saying, because some people had such a bad time, and you kind of feel guilty that you've benefited out of a very bad situation. But yes, people it was lockdown. There was lots of people thinking, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to take up a hobby. I'm going to start making jewellery. And a lot of people did. And we had significant growth within the pandemic. I think we were growing anyway at quite a good rate, but I think we probably had the equivalent of about 3 or 4 years growth in 1 year. So it was really good for us. And luckily, we've managed to maintain that. It didn't fall off. So we were really one of the lucky ones. Yeah.
And so where are you going? What's the plan?
I feel, this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but I feel like I haven't really got started yet. So I feel like I can achieve a lot more. But if you ask me what, that's where it all gets a bit hazy. I'm not sure. I certainly have no plans to give up or sell the Curious Gem. That's sort of like my baby. That's going to be carrying on, definitely. I've been doing a bit of investment recently, so kind of like angel investment. I've invested into sort of startups, and that's been quite interesting for me, having never had any of that experience. You watch The Dragon's Den, and you have no idea what you're doing. And I looked at like some kind of accounting, spreadsheet that someone gave me, one of these startups. I was like, oh, and I thought, okay, I actually understand this. I can see things, and I can see why you're predicting this amount of growth in. Oh yeah, it's because of that. I thought, okay, I actually probably know a bit more than I give myself credit for. So I'm really interested in kind of like the startups, but the dream would be to buy a small manufacturing business. Really keen on the whole manufacturing side. I really think, unfortunately, in this country, we've outsourced so many things to China and other places for good reason, because labour is so much cheaper out there. It's cheaper. But the cost of labour is really rising in places like India and China at the moment as the cost of living increases. And soon there's not going to be this massive disparity between the Far East and where we are here. So I would love to buy a manufacturing business. Maybe someone's retiring, and they've been going on customers that have been with them for years. They haven't really marketed the business very well. They don't really have an online presence. And I think that's where I can make a difference. I can come in, can jazz it up a bit, get the marketing people on it, get a good website behind it, and modernize. That would be the dream. Also, in my mind, what I would really like to do is do something more of a social enterprise. So I've always done like voluntary work. I've always tried to be part of a community, give something back, cheesy, but yeah, something like that. So I think maybe becoming part of some sort of social enterprise where you feel like you can actually help people, that's really important to me.
Yeah. Amazing. It's been so interesting kind of hearing all about this, all about your business. And we ask everyone at the end, what is your guiding principle in business?
Okay, so guiding principle, I think lead by example. For me, I don't know whether that relates to everyone else. That's what I've always done. I really don't think that you can have any respect from your team if you don't lead by example. Like, I would never ever tell my team to do something that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. For example, we had a problem ages ago with mobile phones in the office. Everyone was on their phones all the time, and just like work wasn't getting done. And so we had to basically say, can you just keep them in your bags? You can look at them at breaks, but just on the kind of shop floor. And so I put my phone in my bag, and I thought, okay, I don't really have to do that. That's actually quite annoying. But if I don't do it, if I don't lead by example, what sort of image does that give, So yeah, I would say lead by example. I always, I'm a hard worker. People don't see me just like going into people's offices, having a chat for an hour. I'll always be the last to leave, definitely not the first to arrive, but last to leave. Work hard, but also have fun. And I want people at work to have fun. I like having fun, having a laugh, and trying to bring some positive energy to the workplace as well. Lead by example.
Any jobs going? A quick question for me. Where did you get your inspiration from? Do you have a particular person or thing that you kind of follow or get real kind of motivation from?
Not really. I've never been a sort of mentor or inspiration like that person. I suppose the person who I got a sort of feel for business from was my dad. He was the MD of a company, and he worked really hard. Not his own company, somebody else's company, but he taught me from a very young age how to write a business letter. Practice your signature. I mean, I could do like the same signature that I had for now when I was like 7 years old or something. Yeah.
And then we'll see it later.
I'll have to charge you for that one. So he was a bit of an entrepreneur as well, like side hustles. He invented a board game. And got a mock-up of it. It didn't go anywhere, but he was always having a go. And I think that he's my sort of inspiration. Yeah.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Very nice.
Victoria, it's been so great to have you on. We really appreciate it. We'd love your story, and good luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brilliant.
Thank you.